Hey guys, welcome back to the This Is All Skate Shop YouTube channel. Today we're gonna do something especially for the skate nerds. Guys who wanna go really deep. And girls, of course. The topic for today is flex. There's not much to find about flex regarding skates. So I did a really deep dive on the topic, thought a lot about it for you. And we have a 5-series YouTube video about this topic. First topic is gonna be just everything there is to know, all those little details about flex. Then the second video is how to adjust the flex and how to increase it. The third video is how to decrease the forward flex, because these are actually other things. Then the fourth video will be only about sideways flex. So flex is a really important topic actually, and it's not so much discussed in our industry, which is a pity, because if you look at it historically, it's actually one of the most important topics, because as soon as there was a skate that was good and stiff and still had some forward flex, as soon as that happened, our sport skyrocketed. So the emergence of our sport is equivalent of the emergence of a skate that has a good flex. I think the first good hard boot skate was in the early 80s, probably like 82 or something, from Rollerblade. It was manufactured by Roaches, but that skate still had laces all the way to the top in the cuff as well. So it did not have a buckle here, but laces. And then in about 87, the first TRS Lightning from the Rollerblade brand came out, and that was the first skate with the buckle. And as soon as that one came out, people started riding stairs and cruising through the city, sketching cars, and all the cool stuff you'll see today. You can see all that in the first video that came out. That was called Dare to Air. That was the first video where you see people shredding on skates. I'm talking right now about shredding, but just the fact of having control over your skates and being able to do, on the one hand, the dangerous trick stuff, but on the other hand, just having control and doing normal stuff, they are kind of the same. Because if you want to just cruise through the park, you also need to have as much control as you can have. So for that, you also need the same support and the same flex. So what is flex and what does it do? Of course, a skate is able to move forward, and it lets you put your knee over your toe, because that's the ideal position to skate in. And it does so by having a cuff bolt. And the cuff bolt sits in this hole here, and there's also a hole in this cuff. And because you have that, this is able to move forward. Then there's a couple of things that determine the flex of a skate. One of the biggest things is the position of the cuff bolt. Here for this throne skate that I have now, the cuff bolts are pretty much on the side, so they point in this direction. But there's also a lot of skates where the cuff bolt is way more to the back, and that means that the skate is actually stiffer. Just imagine the more backwards the cuff bolts are, even if they sit like all the way over here, then the stiffer the skate is. For example, one of the skates that has the cuff bolts the closest together is the Seba CJ skate, which is of course also a carbon boot. And you can really notice it in the Seba CJ that the cuff flexes forward a lot less than, for example, on a USD Aeon. Where with the USD Aeon, but also the Power Slide Next, the cuff bolt is exactly linear like this, and the forward flex is really easy. So it has a lot of forward flex. And then there's one other way to do it, and that the only skate right now on the market that has that is the Roaches X35. It's called the Biomech system. And with the Biomech system, they don't have the cuff bolt aligned like this, but they have it anatomically correct, is what they say, exactly on the ankle joint. So they put it exactly in the position where your ankle joint wants to flex, because the ankle doesn't flex forward. So if you normally move your knee forward, it doesn't go over your foot, but it goes inwards actually a little bit normally. You see this? If we go like this, my knees go inwards. And the Biomech system has the cuff bolts exactly in that position. And in that position, you even have more flex. So that's probably one of the most flexiest skates on the market, regarding the cuff position at least. There are of course a few other things that you can do to make a skate flex forward. One way, for example, is this Salomon skate. Well, I say Salomon skate, but it's an Icon brand skate right now. But originally, this mold was used by Salomon, and this cuff here for most of the Salomon skates as well was bolted on in the back, and then here it's also bolted on the side. Some of the Salomon skates then had a little slot where the cuff could slide up and down, and so it was bolted in the back, connected here, and then the forward flex was pivoted more around the back. Yeah, I think in general the end result would be a little bit the same than if you have a hinge screw here, like a normal cuff bolt. But just pointing out that there's different ways to do this. Then there's also been skates that did not have a cuff at all, like the Deshi Carbon and the USD Carbon 1. They did not have a cuff. That's not really what you want in a skate. You want to have that movement. You just want it to be stiff, of course, but that's why the USD Carbon 2 came really soon afterwards, and it did have a cuff. Then, of course, there's also skates that have no cuff at all, which are speed skates. And those are only for people that have really, really, really trained ankles. So if you're like a real marathon skater and you train your ankles every day and you have like really strong ankle muscles, then maybe you can handle that. And maybe there's a small advantage in your push. But in general, all the other stuff like steering and braking are so much worse if you don't have a cuff and if you don't have the support. That these skates without a cuff are only for marathons where there's like no traffic and you don't have to brake at all. So if you want to be in control of your skate, a skate should have a cuff. Next thing that determines the rate of the flex is the material of the cuff and of the shell. So there is of course thicker plastic and thinner plastic, and there's harder and softer plastics, and these also determine the rate of the flex. Some cuffs actually come in soft and hard, so especially Power Slide or like USD branded skates sometimes have the option to having a harder or a softer cuff. So that's really interesting. Another thing that determines the flex is your own size. So if you're a kid, then you need a more flexy skate, of course. And if you're a really big guy with size 49 skates, then you need a lot more support. And this is actually a problem because the flex is not really adjusted in the shoe size. So a lot of the big sized skates are actually too flexy for the people using them. And a lot of the small size skates are actually too stiff for the kids. For example, some of the kid skates, like the Racers Genesis, is too stiff. And you can really see that when the kids are skating on it, that they have their knees kind of like locked, that they're standing like this. And you really need to stand like that, but if the skate is too stiff, then you cannot do that. All right, let's talk about range of motion right now. That's the next topic. And it's one of the most important topics to any skater because it's also the first thing that we do in classes. We of course have a skate school here in Amsterdam. So if you ever want to get a lesson, you can come here. And one of the first things we'll do is we'll let you stand in this position because this is the skating position. We also have an entire video about the skating position. So if you want to try it at home, check out that video. Knees over toes are the most important thing to do when you start skating. It's also one of the biggest beginner's mistake to not have your knees over toes. And if you have a really big range of motion, you're probably more likely to be a good skater than if you don't. And a normal range of motion is about 10 centimeters. And you can do this test where you're gonna stand before a wall. So the wall will be here, and you put your knee against the wall and you try to put your foot as far backwards as possible. And then you can see how far your toe is from the wall. And normally, when normal people do that, they have about 10 centimeters of distance between their toe and the wall. Me, for example, I have like really an extreme dorsal flexi is the official name, dorsal flexi, because my dorsal flexi is 20 centimeters, and that's really a lot. That means for me, falling is a lot easier because I can get down to the ground a lot easier than other people. But if your dorsal flexi is like only 5 centimeters or maybe even 0, that your knee hits and your toes at the same point, then it's a lot harder for you to get down to the ground without immediately falling backwards. This enables you to just go down to the ground in a straight line. So it's not just about falling, but it's also about pushing and just normal skating. You need to have your knees over toe. And the range of motion that you have there also determines how your skate should flex. So for me, my range of motion is really extreme. So I need a skate to kind of like compensate for that, maybe even, because it's so extreme. And let's say just the range of motion of your skate should be about the same as your own range of motion, okay? So what skate is good for somebody with a lot of range of motion, and that is a stiff one, because you need to kind of like, the skate needs to catch your lack of support. So I need a really stiff skate actually. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you don't have a lot of range of motion, you also need a really stiff one, because just imagine you only being able to do this and the skate is able to do all that, then it's not really a good match. So you need to have a skate that really catches you at the point where you want to stop. So in both of these extremes, you need a really stiff skate to kind of like compensate for you. And if you have a normal dorsal flexi, then you can have a more of a normal flex skate. This goes to show that it's a really difficult topic, and if you really want to know if the skate has the right flex for you, you can of course best come to our store here in Amsterdam and just try on the skate yourself and feel how it is. If you already have a skate at home, we're gonna talk later in the next videos on how to adjust your skate if you want to make it more or less flexy. Next topic is progressive versus linear flex. Again, these complicated words. Why? Okay, so progressive, if you look at it like as a chart, remember math class, progressive is that it goes like this, it's an exponential curve, and linear, it goes in a straight line, okay? So, linear, let me explain that. The more you go forward, it will make the flex resistance constant. So you have a certain resistance here if you're in the beginning of your flex, or if you're at the end, it's kind of like the same. An example of a skate like that is this cheap soft boot here. Skates like this are terrible. I would not advise anybody to buy them. If I push here, it's really easy for me to push forward. And at the end, it kind of like still takes me the same amount of force to push the skate forward. So this is a linear flex skate, okay? This is not exponential. It doesn't get harder the more I get forward. And then at the end, it kind of like just stops. All right. Then the other extreme is a progressive flex. And that is here, it's kind of like easy in the beginning. And then later, it gets harder and harder. And every time when I push twice as hard, I will still be able to move it forward just a little bit extra. So then I push really hard and I can still move it forward. But now if I push twice as hard again, I can still move it forward a little bit. That's progressive flex. You can go there, but it just gets harder and harder every time. Progressive flex is the way a skate should be. And that's the case with hopefully, at least this is something that you hope for, the higher quality models should have a progressive flex. I don't think that's always the case. We'll test that in one of the next upcoming videos where I'll try on all the skates and say to you if it's a progressive or a linear flex and how much the flex will be. But at least if you want a high performance skate, it should be progressive flex. Then we've been talking about forward flex, but there's also backwards flex, of course. And Backwards flex is, in my opinion, it should also be progressive. So if you want to lean backwards, you can, but it's just harder to do. And one of the only skates on the market that I know that really works like this is, again, the classic Roches M12, where if I pull it back, you can see it here, I can pull it back, and then if I pull twice as hard, I can still pull it back a little bit, and now if I pull twice as hard again, I can still move it back a little bit. That's really good. That's kind of like the natural way, or the best way for it to be. Most other skates, though, have kind of like this lock system here, which I don't really agree with. You see it here? That the cuff kind of like locks in this line here. Or, for example, let's see. Here this USD Sway also has this lock system. The Seba, or the FR skates, I mean, also have this lock. Then the Shift, this is my skate, also has this lock, where just the backwards flex just kind of like stops and there's an end. I don't agree with that. I think it should be progressive. I think this lock system is kind of like a workaround, which is a bad design. That is just, it's common. Everybody has it. Most, I think 90% plus of the skates have that. But I think in an ideal world, if you have your flex really figured out, then it should be way more like the M12 is over here. Then there's a V-cut system in a lot of the cuffs. This one is adjustable, so that's interesting. So you can really see the difference. Here's the normal one. And this is a little insert that you can take out to create a V-cut. And the V-cut, kind of like, it's a patch. It's kind of like a plaster or a workaround, however you want to call it, for having a bad backwards flex. You put a V-cut in the cuff, and then it kind of like has some backwards flex. The Throne also has one version which is a straight cuff, and then they have a V-cut cuff as well, so they can change it a little bit. But I just think that it's a workaround for having not so good natural backwards flex in the cuff shell system itself. It is something you can do at home, of course, as well. If you have a straight cut cuff, you can always cut it. If only there was a way to measure or to know the amount of flex that a skate has, right? Well, I can say to you, there's nothing for skates. There's no way to measure it. At least the best thing that I can do is to try them all and explain to you how they compare, which I'm gonna do, of course. In skiing, however, it's way more normal for brands to provide the flex rating of a skate. And the flex rating in skiing used to be a scale from 0 to 10. Well, it was never 0, because 0 is bad. You don't want a skate that has no flex. You can never find a ski that has a flex rating of 0, because in skiing it's really well known that the stiffer a ski is, the better it is. So you will find skis that have like a flex rating of 7, 8 or 10, and that actually changed to the numbers 70, 80 or 100 around the zeros area. So about like 25 years ago, they kind of like changed from 1 to 10 to 0 to 100. And they also kept making it stiffer and stiffer. So now you have like skis that are 110, 120, and it goes up every time. 130 is now on the market, 140, and even 150 for the most stiffest racing ski boots. So now you end up with the system where, ironically, 100 is the medium in skiing, and then if you have something below that, it's kind of like flexy, so it has a lot of forward flex, and if it's above 100, it's stiff. That's how skiing now works. It kind of like is an evolved system. It's kind of interesting how that went through the years. I think I'll keep that system and adopt it to inline skating whenever I'm gonna do all the review of all the flex and try all the boots. I'm also gonna have like 100 as the medium, and then 130, for example, if it's super stiff, and 70 if it's really flexible. In skiing, it's normal if you're like a light female or child or just a light person. to take a more flexi boot, and then if you are more heavy, and stronger, you'll take like 130. But also, what you want to do with it is also, if you just want to go low speeds and cruise a little bit, you can go with a cheaper or a more flexi boot. And if you're going to want to do race, you need to have a stiffer boot. So the system that they have in skiing is really made up. It's not like there's no real measurements to it. I listened to a podcast of an engineer that worked at the Atomic ski boot brand, and they said that they did have a machine where they can put it in a boot to measure the torque. So that's kind of like the resistance of a boot. And they did their best to be medium. So they also measured the torque of all the other ski boots and really tried their best to have their 100, the kind of like the normal 100. So the brands there in skiing do their best to make a good scale, but it's all kind of like made up. That nobody really knows how stiff 100 really should be, and there's no like agreements between the brands. Everybody is just doing something. So that's kind of interesting that there is a system, but there's still kind of like still not really a system. Maybe one day we can have the same with inline skating. I would love there to be a system kind of like this, where there is a system, but it's not really a system, but there's still a system. Because I think that's a lot better than not having anything at all like we have right now. So if you're a brand owner and you're listening to this, please give the Forward Flex with your specs. If you release a skate, just let us know. Is it like 100? Is it a medium flex, or like a 70 or a 120? It's really good for customers to pick a skate also based on the flex. One other reason why it's hard to say that a certain boot is a certain flex is because the foot size in relation to a boot also determines the flex. So if you have a boot in a certain size and a person with a really small foot goes into that boot, that person will have a lot more flex in that boot than if somebody goes into that boot, which will fill up the shell completely. So to translate that for you, because you only have one size, of course, watching this, if you are going to get a skate which is way too big, you will have a lot more flex in that skate than you will have in a skate that is exactly your size. So that makes it also hard to make an objective system. The next topic is the angle of your flex, and that is kind of like what I'm doing now. My feet are at the same place, but my knees are moving. And that has to do with also the position of my foot. So if you're standing on your foot kind of like go inwards, and it's called pronation. And if your foot are pronated, your knees naturally go inwards. And if you go skate like that with like no good insoles and just like as if you're standing on the normal ground, you'll also have like certain pains probably, and it goes up all the way to your hips and the position of where your body is in if your foot are not in the right position. And it also has to do with, of course, the forward flex, because the flex of a skate works in a certain way, and then if your foot are not in that same direction, then it will change kind of like how a skate will feel. The right way to skate is if your foot are a little bit supinated, and that's in this position. I'm not sure if that's related, but of course it's supination, and then there's also super feet, which is just also sup. You can see it here. We have the super feet insoles, and the super feet insoles have a really hard cup in the back. I'll show you the cup. This is made of really hard plastic. This hard cup locks your foot in the right position, and in this position your knees go perfectly forward like they're supposed to go. So if you're standing low, your knees should be here, and this is how you're skating. So we advise everybody to get the correct position and to get a super feet insole in their skate. We can also make custom super feet insoles. We have like like a machine here in the shop, and we can adjust it to your foot. I'll put a link in the description if you want to learn more about this. These were all the little things regarding forward flex. So this is kind of like the parameters that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about forward flex. And now we can dive more into how you can adjust the flex. We're going to talk about increasing the flex, decreasing the flex, and also how do all the skates compare. This is going to be in the next video, so if you want to learn more about forward flex, check it out, and I'll see you guys next week in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.